Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2. I'll probably have about 4 parts today for Friday, August 23rd, 2013. My website is ggnonline.net, and on YouTube my channels are DDarko 2012 and DDarko 2013. I'd like to thank those who have supported through donations. I really do appreciate it. And we left off right here with talking about Syria and just the mass chaos that's going on, and how a lot of it has to do with creating a greater Israel. And part of that is they need some kind of their own economy, right? And one of them is they've started exporting Israeli natural gas, and they're trying to compete with Russia. So with that being said, we're going to now move with some other stories, and then we'll get into some domestic news as far as martial law and crap like that happening. Assad reshuffles government, nominates new ministers. This is kind of big news. Syrian President Assad issued on Thursday the decree number 310 of 2013 to reshuffle the cabinet. It says here that you can go in there and follow the actual people who have been changed out, but basically all of them: deputy prime ministers, minister of education, the economy and foreign trade, industry. So maybe they'll have different ways of thinking and stuff like that. We know that what the West is trying to do is try to create a regime change by putting pressure on him to step down, just by war, by all the atrocities, war of attrition. They figure they're going to have him step down. What they don't want to happen is for the sovereign Syrian people to basically have or hold their own elections in 2014. But for whatever it's worth, the West has conceded that Assad will remain in power until these elections. Syrian foreign minister says Assad may run 2014 presidential elections. But it goes on here, says that as far as peace talks with the terrorists, they said that they're ready for dialogue without preconditions, including those who have Syrians' blood smeared on their hands. They said here that he's in contact with his people, and the election in 2014 is in the hand of the Syrian people. The minister said, adding that if the people in 2014 wanted Assad to run for the elections, he will do so. Then you see this, right, the pictures, right, of the Syrian children that are basically victims of Western Zionist imperialism. And says, so they'll give you these, these pictures on the mainstream media, like Yahoo would say, as 1 million child refugees flee Syria, a glimpse into their lives. So, they go in there and they're going to engineer consent. It says it's easy to think the faces of the Syrian civil war, which is not, it's an invasion by Western quote, democratic powers funding terrorism, belong to President Assad, his military forces, and ragtag cadre of freedom fighters. That's what they call the terrorists. When they're your allies, they call them freedom fighters. But most of my viewers and myself know that the United States, Israel, Europe, NATO does not give a shit about the children of Syria. Flood of Syria refugees to Iraq tops 40,000. This is after the same terrorists that the West is funding massacred, about 450 Kurds. Now most of the Kurd soldiers, I would imagine, the rebels, the real freedom fighters, are ready to go to war with these terrorists that the United States is supporting. So, and they evacuate a lot of Kurds out of Syria because it's going to get bad there probably. It's already been pretty bloody and bad, but it's going to get worse. That's what it's about, besides resources, is creating refugees. And of course, where are these refugees going to go? Like Iraq and all of them in Afghanistan, they're going to export them to mostly white countries. That's what they're going to do. They're going to go to Asia, China? No. Africa? No. They're going to send them to Europe and the United States. 54 Iraqis killed as suicide bombers attack security post and wedding. Next up, we have twin explosions target 2 mosques in Tripoli in Lebanon, leaving 27 killed and 352 wounded. So Lebanon, this is like the second bombing in the last week. It's probably the third in the last month. So 2 explosions that were separate, wounded 352 people, killed 27. This, of course, is part of a bigger agenda, like I said, running pipelines through that area because Lebanon, like Iran, supports the Syrian government. And because you have kind of an axis of anti-Zionism, which is Iran, Syria, and Lebanon. So that axis of anti-Zionism cannot exist in a greater Israel. Talking about Israeli expansion. Israel strikes militant base in Lebanon after rocket fire. And this is from today. Israel said it bombed a militant group based in Lebanon on Friday in response to the launching of 4 rockets across its northern border hours earlier. They said it's the first strike by Israel inside Lebanon since the 2006 war, which I don't think is exactly true. But for whatever it's worth, it says here that the IDF denies reports that it retaliated. They don't expect the attack to lead to wider, basically, conflict. Of course, Natiana said anyone who harms us should know we will harm them. Lebanon to file a complaint against Israeli raid. So the president says here they're filing a complaint to the UN Security Council against the Zionist enemy attack on the Nameh town south of Beirut. Border violations must be resolved, says here, basically for violating the sovereignty of Lebanon. So talking about creating basically chaos like Libya and Afghanistan, that's what the Egyptian people are going to get. They're going to get Libya, they're going to get Syria, well, not Syria yet, but basically Libya and Afghanistan to a certain extent, Iraq especially, like that. They're going to put these autocrats back in there, and they're going to just let it never let the people become sovereign, united, and fight these Western imperialists. Mubarak released. Egyptians wonder where the revolution went. Well, the revolution was kind of engineered to begin with the Arab Spring. They call it the Twitter revolutions and stuff. For many Egyptians, his release from prison today symbolizes the reversal of changes wrought by the 2011 revolution. So this is what they get. They get Mubarak again. This, of course, all plays into Israel's hands. Tunisia issues international arrest warrant for Salafi leader. For whatever it's worth, I remember hearing or reading some reports, don't know if it's this info, about the whole Arab Spring, was that Israel and the Zionists were actually kind of surprised, or it came out of left field for them as far as the whole rise of the Muslim Brotherhood. But that was a Western proxy to begin with, like I said. So as that either kind of fizzled out. So they go bring in the old order. Tunisia has issued an international arrest warrant for the Salafi leader, who is said to have been the key figures of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda in northern Africa. So Tunisia has been kind of heating up. North Africa has. Which is why it's interesting that military intelligence facilities make Gibraltar, a strategic asset for Britain. So all of a sudden they're sending naval ships to northwest Africa, situated right in the site of unstable North Africa, and is on the shipping route to the Middle East. So it's kind of a joke. They say tensions between Britain and Spain over the tiny territory have resurfaced. So, but it probably has nothing to do with that. This Belmo, Qatar, his militants merged with Mali's Mahoho. This is again from yesterday. An Al-Qaeda-linked group led by a Algerian militant says that it merged with another group to take revenge against France for its military campaign in Mali. Now this is very interesting because I talked about how the people in Mali, basically northern Mali, the Tuareg rebels wanted their own autonomy, and they helped fight with France to rid these guys, these Al-Qaeda terrorists. These are the international terrorist proxy force, wherever there's real freedom fighters, these assholes show up and they just muddy the waters, right? So because all of a sudden Al-Qaeda's there, now all of a sudden the freedom fighters work with the imperialists to get rid of these Al-Qaeda guys because they really are just bad news. But then after that, the freedom fighters that now worked with the imperialists, well, now they're not going to really get their lands back. They're not going to get their sovereignty. They were just basically used, like the Tuareg said. So it's funny because this guy right here is what? A CIA agent. He's the guy that's responsible for that explosion where a bunch of people were killed in Algeria, the fuel platform. That was their guy. So now they're going to be heading over to Mali, and they're going to be taking care of the Tuareg rebels. Because I just came out with a quote recently, or reported on it, about basically the Tuareg rebels saying that the recent elections were a sham, and they're not going to basically create they're not going to create stabilization. So Paraguay's Congress grants military powers to its new president. The Paraguayan president, Horacio Cortés, has won new powers by the nation's legislators to deploy military forces to crush the unrest in the country just a week after being sworn into office. So, just take another step backwards there for Paraguay. On that note, I've had this article waiting. Chilling on ice. Rebels kill 5 Paraguay guards. Leftist rebels in Paraguay have kidnapped and killed 5 security guards in their first attack since the inauguration of President Cortez. Says here, this is from August 19th. Costa Rica's president flew narcotics jet to Hugo Chavez's funeral. An American registered drug plane has been plying the airspace over Central and South America, carrying cargoes of cocaine for a good long while authorities admit they've been investigating it, quote, investigating since 2011 without any incidences. All right, next up we have SWAT cop says American neighborhoods are battlefields and claims cops face same dangers as soldiers in Afghanistan. So like everything else, they're not going to take your guns away. They're going to make it really hard to get ammunition and different things like that. Maybe they will come for your guns, but there's circumventing laws. So they're not going to have troops on the ground right away. They're going to just militarize the police so that, you know, people can't say, well, there is no martial law, even though there technically is. This author says that there's too many cops today that have been conditioned to see the people they serve not as citizens with rights, but as an enemy. Like I said, they don't serve the people, they serve banks and monetary system to enforce it. So someone said policy enforcer, yes, policy enforcer, or a political law enforcement or revenue collector. But as far as treating like battlefields, like I mentioned before from that movie Red Dawn, the new one, which was really horrible, you have the guys saying, well, you know, in Iraq, you know, we had to fight the bad guys, and we had to use they had to use those tactics. You know, now we have to become the bad guys. You know, it's talking about using terrorist tactics against invaders. And I thought, well, no, wait a minute. The soldiers over there, you were the bad guys, and the guys fighting you against the imperialists, they were the good guys. So now you are originally the bad guys, and now you're using the good guys' tactics. So it's all mind control. Praise God for FEMA video uploaded by FEMA. FEMA published a video today to show us how awesome they are. They want you to meet this individual who relocated after a flood to a new log cabin with all these appliances, but big surprise, he has nothing but nice things to say about FEMA. They came in and put a roof over my head. God praise him for that. Says that it is a great job of putting our community together, which is why I said I noticed all these people that were getting out claims by FEMA for flooding back in 2008, 2009, that was buying off their trust. They were getting all these bogus cash awards to people for some floods because they were buying their trust when they came down. A lot of mind control psyops going on. This right here from today, vaccine-fearing Texas megachurch. You have to be suspicious. Megachurch. That means that this guy is a shill. I would not trust him. Vaccine-fearing Texas megachurch urges his flock to immunize after measles outbreak. Remember I said you keep hearing about measles outbreak everywhere. Remember this from back in the day, secret FEMA plan to use pastors as pacifiers in preparation for martial law. Nationwide initiatives trains volunteers to teach congregations or their flock to obey the government during seizures of guns, property, forced inoculations, and forced relocation. A bird flu outbreak. Says here, in the event of an outbreak of a bioterrorist attack, there would be mass vaccination. They'd have a program nationwide, pills in people palm in 48 hours. So, told that the Walmart has been designated as a central outlet for this procedure. Funny, because in the recent shootings, they said that they had taken the children and sent them and to meet their parents at a Walmart. From last October, Obama's Blue Shirts, Homeland Security graduates first class of FEMA Youth Corps. That quote, we cannot continue to rely on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we set. Who sets? Not the people. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, and just as well funded. Not to scare you, but just to let you know what's going on in the background, Lincoln Park Zoo simulates bird flu disaster. This is from Chicago. With more extreme weather and threat of disease outbreak or even terrorist attacks, the program prepares zoos to work with the federal government, that's what they're saying, to create the best solution. Scientists to make deadlier versions of the bird flu in a lab. Controversial studies are meant to help predict what the viruses will do next. So they're going to weaponize it, right? There's theoretical. Then scientists discover a new bird flu virus worse than H7N1. So they're actually finding it already out. So, and they're analyzing the bird flu in China. They're finding more virus threats are actually lurking than they thought. Decomposed human bodies now routinely found floating down China's rivers. Louisiana sinkhole swallows trees in seconds. This is just August 22nd. Sinkhole Then there's another sinkhole in California that actually closed I-80. So I don't know what's going on here, but join me in part 3. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.